In this video, I'm demonstrating how I went about making a prototype for a simple chest harness. The harness that I'm making is non-adjustable. It's just two pieces of leather that are attached to an O-ring for the front of the harness and then threaded through an O-ring in the back. It means you can raise and lower the O-ring, but it won't change the length of the strips. So what I'm doing here is deciding that I need two strips that are total length of 42 inches long by 3/4 of an inch wide. And I'm going to be sewing the leather to the back sides together so that it's two front sides facing out. So I actually need twice as many of those strips, but my leather is not 42 inches long, so I'm going to have to cut several more pieces. I'm going to make 4 strips that are 21 inches long a piece, and then I'll sew them together. So I need 4 strips that are 21 inches long by 3¼ inches wide, and I'm going to be sewing them back to back, so I actually need 8 strips that are 20 inches long by 3/4 of an inch wide. So the first thing I'm going to go about doing here is actually cutting the strips. I'm trying to figure out a way to make best use of my material so I don't waste that much. So I'm going to cut it along this edge, which is approximately 21 inches high. The first way that I attempted to cut it was just using a straight blade, which when you're cutting leather is not actually that good. It's better to use a curved blade, and I find this out pretty quickly. It pinches the material as you go and gets you a really rough cut. So what I've transitioned to here is actually marking the strips in pen, drawing the line, and I'll end up cutting them by hand with scissors. It'll make sure that I get a cleaner cut and I don't rip the edges of the strips as I cut them. It's a little bit more tedious this way, but we'll get a better product at the end. So now all of my strips are cut, all 8 of them. So now the next part is to cut them or to sew them back to back so that I have 2 sides facing out on each strip. I've already set my machine up. This material is thin enough that I can set the machine up just like I would for any sewing project, and it will be able to go through the leather no problem. I'll be sewing 1 row of stitching down each side of each strip, so there's going to be 2 rows of stitching on each strip. I don't really know what we're talking about. Now, because this is a prototype, I am not worried about how I'm fixing the ends of my thread. Normally, you would put a knot at the beginning and ending of a stitching of a seam, but this is a borrowed machine, and I actually don't know how to make a knot on this machine, and it's just a prototype, so I'm not too worried about it for this go around. But in the future, I would definitely knot at the beginning and end just to fix the threads in place so they don't come undone. So I'm going to inch down the entire length of this set of strips, sewing about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Because I cut these by hand, they're not exactly going to line up, and I'm going to go back and trim them a little bit later. It's quite important with the stretchy material that I'm using that I don't pull it as I go, because if I pull too hard on either the top or the bottom, or if I pull too hard to the right or the left as it's sewing, it's going to stitch with that strain in the fabric, which means that when I pull my strips out, they will not be flat straps of leather. They'll be very bent, twisted, curvy. It's not going to be very appealing to look at. So I'm trying not to pull too hard. I'm trying to just let the machine feed the material by itself so I can get a nice relaxed stitch. And that's one side done. I'm going to flip it over and do the same along the other side. And this strap is done. So I'll begin on the next set. At this point, I had a problem with the bobbin not feeding correctly. I just had to fix it. Pretty soon I'll be on my way again. So at this point, because my the strips were all cut by hand, they're a little bit uneven along the edges. So I'm going to go back through and just trim a little bit of the excess on either side off just to even it up a little bit. So at this point I'm figuring out that because I've cut 4 sets of 20 inches, I'm going to have to be quite creative in how I attach it to the front O-ring. So I'm actually going to cut 2 of these 20-inch long pieces into 10 inches. And then I'm actually going to rivet the first couple around that front O-ring so I know which direction I'm headed in. I can see if it's going to work out or not. The first step to this kind of riveting is punching the hole. So I've got a hole punch here that I'm going to select a small size hole for. So I've cut my hole. I'm going to stick the back end of the rivet into place, and I'm going to snap the front side on. The kinds of rivets I'm using are just snap-ons. You snap them in place and then you hammer them down. I've got a rivet setter here in my left hand. I'm going to hit with a mallet a couple times to set it in place, and that's not going anywhere. I'm going to do the same to the other strip that I've already cut. I'm going to cut my second piece of 20-inch long into 10 inches, 2 10-inch pieces. I'm going to rivet those in place also. So all 4 of those are in place. I'm going to use the remaining 2 20-inch long segments to connect diagonal pieces together. That'll make the total length of any one strip 10 plus 10 plus 20, which will be 40, which is the length that I need. And I'll rivet them together to join them, and that'll finish off the piece. So right here, I'm actually going to thread the O-ring on. You can see how the one simple cross of the 2 strips will keep the O-ring in place, but will allow it to move up and down on those 2 strips. That's the back of the O-ring. The one where I've already riveted the 4 pieces on is the front. So I'm just going to rivet these 2 ends together. I'm not too worried about this because it's just a prototype, but I am trying to get my rivets set in the center of the strips. I'm also thinking about which strap on top will look better. It would have been easier, perhaps, if I had had a piece of leather where I could have cut a 42-inch long piece, but since I didn't, I'm having to make do. I'm going to speed through the rest of this. What I'm doing here is measuring to make sure that my total length is going to be fine, and it is. So now I'm going to rivet the rest of the pieces in place. I've connected diagonal straps or opposite straps of the first 4 that I put on the front O-ring. I'm connecting opposites to each other. That way the straps will cross at the back O-ring, making a crisscross pattern on either side of the body. I've snapped them all in place, and now I'm going to hammer them each. The riveting set that I have, that small metal thing beneath my rivet setter, that disc is actually indented. It's concave on one side, which fits the head of the rivet. It means it won't dent the domed head of my rivet while I'm pounding it in. You kind of have to have both pieces. They sell them as sets online. So you can see it's all together here. That back O-ring is held on captive by the weaving, and that front O-ring is held on by those 4 sets of rivets. And I'm just going to trim these up to match where they've connected. You can see that they're a little bit off. I'm just going to trim them up pretty quickly. And then take a look at the final harness. It's pretty simple, non-adjustable, but it'll do the job.